All of that 70 million group of young people who will come out and vote. I believe in you. I think you can turn our nation around. You can make it live up to what it's supposed to do. It's not just that you're the future. You're actually the present. You're actually what we're supposed to be at this moment. And the fact that you have a voice, the fact that you can have a say, you vote for whoever you want for, vote for what you believe in. But I believe that the majority of you can see what's actually happening and you want things to change. So I say all that to say, thank you in advance for your input and the victory that is to come.
Tylko ty nas możesz uratować.
Solo tú puedes salvarnos.
تنها شما ما را نجات داده میتانید.
Only you can save us.
And welcome, America, from the smoky coasts of California, Oregon, and Washington to the steamy, sticky nights of the Northeast here in Brooklyn, Boston, Philly, Washington, down to the palm tree speckled beaches of our South in Florida and across to the Gulf Coast, recently hit by terrible storms, and through our beautiful heartland, straight up the Mississippi to beautiful Michigan. A big welcome to all of you, and welcome to this first panel for Only You Can Save Us. My name is Mike Kleba, and I am a public school teacher. In fact, I was at school today, walking the hallways. We're getting ready for the kids. I saw a few kids. It's pretty great. We're all wearing masks. It's hybrid here on Long Island, New York, coming at you from New York. I'm actually in Brooklyn. And I'm excited to bring in our panelists. Before we do, though, I wanted to talk for just a minute about my grandmother. When I was a kid, I would stand at her side while she made chocolate chip cookies. I have this really great memory of it. She had the recipe in her head, and she would just pull ingredients off the shelf like a magician. She just knew how much of everything. And I marveled at this as a 8 or 9-year-old boy. And I remember her saying something that sticks with me, and I think it could be useful tonight. Here's what she said. She said, some people do just a little bit of salt in their chocolate chip cookies, but I do just a little bit more. And I think that's the secret. And so tonight, one of the themes we're going to lean on is asking you, what's the little bit more you can do? There are things we don't talk about in our culture. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about race. We don't talk about our salaries. We avoid certain topics. Well, in the next couple months and beyond, this panel invites you tonight. Can you be a little bit more talkative about politics? A little bit more uncomfortable calling a friend or a family member and engaging them in a respectful conversation about who they're voting for? Maybe invite somebody to go to the polls with you and work them, not just vote. So that's tonight. That's for my grandma. And I'd like to welcome our guests. First, the amazing and wonderful Humaira Ghilzai. She's a writer, speaker, Afghanistan cultural advisor. She focuses on projects that bring positive social change and her volunteer efforts range from co-founding Afghan Friends Network to improving education for girls, boys, and women in Afghanistan, to canvassing in Reno and Dallas for Hillary Clinton and Better O'Rourke's campaigns. Since 2016, Humaira has been a member of the Sister District Project. I know she's going to talk about that tonight. And it's been focused on state legislature races because all politics are local politics. For 2020, she's focusing on flipping 4 red seats to blue by supporting 4 BIPOC candidates in Arizona and Texas. She's also devoting her time to getting out the vote. Welcome, Humaira. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
How's it going? You're coming to us from where? Can you give us a read?
I'm here in San Francisco. It's a little bit foggy and a little bit smoky from all the fires that are around California that are caused by climate change.
Thanks for just saying that together in a sentence. I feel like a lot of times we leave out the important stuff. I'd like to bring in, welcome. I'd like to bring in my good friend, Lincoln Restler. Lincoln Restler is a former district leader here in, that's actually John Hoadley, but I'm going to welcome John Hoadley and Lincoln Restler. There we go. So we got John Hoadley here. That's right, everybody. And he was the surprise. But let's go to the guy in red, in the red light. Turning on that red light for us. So good to see you, Lincoln. Welcome, Lincoln Restler, former district leader. Well, my former district leader here in Brooklyn, co-founder of the New Kings Democrats, a community organizer, a guy I see about the neighborhood here in Greenpoint, New York, and an important fella at St. Nick's Alliance. I just want to talk about St. Nick's for just a second. St. Nick's Alliance seeks to transform the lives of low and moderate income people through employment, education, housing, and healthcare. Yes, we do this by delivering impactful services with measurable outcomes to children, adults, and the elderly. As a civic anchor, St. Nick's carries out this mission within the context of building a sustainable community for all people through the arts, environmental advocacy, and urban planning. Welcome, Lincoln Restler, man. Hi.
Thank you, brother. Great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you all tonight.
And you are on the road. I'm guessing canvassing. I mean, I don't know you as a guy who doesn't canvass. So
tonight, I was actually meeting with some community leaders. We were doing a food distribution and things lost track of time. But I'm on my way home, almost back. And happy to be joining you from the back of a car.
I'm delighted by that. And let me just say that if more people lost track of time doing good work, I think we'd just make things better. I'm just going to say it out loud because that's what I think. And I'm moderating. So speaking of moderating, John Hoadley for Congress. I'm really excited and honored to bring in John Hoadley, who snuck in the side door. He's the state rep in Michigan in the 60th district, which is 90,000 people in Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo Township. I know that place because of the song. I want to talk about John's family of educators. I got a special place in my heart for anybody whose family's got teachers in it. I'll say this, a lot of people have family members who are teachers, but your family's deep, Representative Hoadley. You've got parents in the gig, you got a sister, you got aunts, cousins. I'm just guessing conversations at your house tend to fall into the conversation about kids, what we're doing for them, talking about probably sports, arts, after school programs. So I just want to say, I want to do just this quick plug for teachers, and then we're going to plug your upcoming election, and we're going to support that. That I just appreciate so much what you must do in your household and in your family, and let's get you elected. You're running for the U.S. House of Representatives, sir.
That's right, and I love that you started with family of teachers and educators, because that's where I come from, and those are the types of folks that I'm fighting for. It also means that if I wasn't fighting for educators and education, Thanksgiving would be really awkward. So I'm always going to be doing that. And now I'm running for U.S. Congress, where We're having an opportunity to not only put someone in Congress who's going to be fighting for public schools and public education instead of the DeVos agenda, but we also can turn out more voters in Southwest Michigan. That'll help us win races up and down the ballot. And that's why I'm loving our conversation tonight.
Beautiful. Well, we're delighted to have you, delighted to have all of you. And as I look across this gorgeous screen, what I see is, a volunteer organizer, somebody who's rallying the groups. I see on the ground activist who's actually meeting people in their homes. And I see a political representative and then a teacher. Hey, you guys, we could get the band together. I'm just saying, I can play tambourine. All right, so here's my first question for you. We'll go around. John, if we could start with you, then Humaira, then Lincoln. And please take a minute to tell us this. I want to hear the story, and I know I'm not alone. What got you into politics? What's your political birth story? What inspired you? Who inspired you? How old were you? Feel free to run with it for a little bit. Tell us a story. John, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
So my entry to politics and why voting matters is actually kind of a part A and part B. So I remember growing up in Vermillion, South Dakota, where I'm from originally, and we had one of those, ballot measures. It was going to pay so we could like expand the school and put a gym on or something like that, right? And I took it for granted that it would pass, but it turns out it didn't. Turns out there's plenty of folks who vote against public schools, who vote against supporting our students and our teachers. And I was shocked. And so a bunch of folks in the community got together and they took a second run at it. And I remember knocking doors and trying to help with that campaign. And the second time it passed. And it showed to me so concretely that talking to people about things that matter can make a difference. And then later, I remember finishing my high school career and watching or I guess I was in the middle of my high school career, watching the election results start coming in 2000, and watching all of a sudden George Bush being elected president, and knowing that the part of the platform that he was running on was actively discriminating against LGBT folks like myself, and having this stark realization that politics isn't just something that happens over there or happens, but it impacts all of us really personally. And whether we're talking about schools, whether we're talking about equality, whether we're talking about racial justice, building a welcoming home for our immigrant friends and neighbors, whether we're talking about the environment, all of these issues come back to impacting us very personally, which is why we all have a personal obligation to be involved in politics for the better.
Thank you. Humaira.
I was going to just start talking.
I love it. I mean, I hope you guys got a chance to look at my bookshelf. I've got recipes. There's things for you to look at. There's things for you to enjoy. Humaira, first of all, John, thank you for that. That was beautiful. Humaira, if you wouldn't mind telling us your birth story. How did you get into this game? Why are you in the game? What are you after?
Well, unlike John, I have a true American story. I moved to the United States as an 11-year-old when my country was invaded by Russians. I was born and raised in Afghanistan. And once we moved to the United States, I didn't become a U.S. citizen until 10 years later. And although I became a citizen and I understood what my responsibility was as a citizen, I never really felt like I had the right to be involved. Although my father was actually a Ralph Nader supporter and Green Party, somehow I didn't get on that political bandwagon. And I'm embarrassed to say that lasted for a long time until 2016, I was, in college, having a career, raising my children, and just never seemed like the right time to get involved. Of course, I was on the sidelines giving commentary, but I didn't really volunteer for anything. And it wasn't until a very qualified woman candidate was running against a very unqualified white male candidate when I felt that maybe I should be paying attention. And it was thanks to one of my friends who was an activist and had been an activist and politically involved all her life, who, she nudged me to come and do phone banking for Hillary, and I would ignore her, and then she would ask me again, and I would ignore her, and finally she shamed me into going to one phone banking party. And after that, I started getting more involved, and I then went on to canvass for her and such, and I was one of the many people who was crying really hard the day of the elections as well. But even though that was not a win, it was not the outcome that I wanted, it really motivated me to get involved earlier this time and to bring other friends along, to threaten my children into doing political things. So I am actually very newly involved in this political volunteering arena.
Beautiful. I'm just thinking about how when people feel disenfranchised, so much of the conversation we're having now as a white cis straight man, and I'm learning daily how much I've taken for granted, and I never felt left out. Anything that I felt left out on was almost a choice, and I really appreciate that story, and I hope that I'm not the only person who heard it and had it land on them personally. Thank you for it. Lincoln, what brings a guy like you to the mean streets of Brooklyn to make a difference and to change people's lives?
Well, thank you, Mike, and thanks for having me here tonight. I'm thrilled to be with you. I grew up in Brooklyn. It was my home. And shortly after college, I'd come back to Brooklyn, and this fella, Barack Obama, was running for president. It was 2008. He was taking on our home state senator, Hillary Clinton, and nobody thought he had a prayer in New York. In fact, he lost every county in the state. But there was one county where he got 49-point-something% of the vote. And that was here in Brooklyn. And that's because we organized the heck out of this borough. We knocked on more doors than I could have ever imagined. We stood at train stations. Brooklyn for Barack was a force of freaking nature. And we realized every political figure in the borough, in the county, in the city, in the state, stood up behind Hillary Clinton. And we could still come within a hair of beating her in the fourth largest city in the country, the borough of Brooklyn. And the election came and passed, and my friends and I asked ourselves, how do we sustain this energy? All of these thousands of people who had newly become awoken to get involved in local politics. And we went and reached out to the head of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, an old school machine boss named Vito Lopez, who has passed. And was a terrible misogynist, so I apologize, but sometimes things happen. And we sat down with him, and he get involved in something else. And we took that as a raison d'etre to shake things up and to make a difference in our borough. And we founded a political organization called New Kings Democrats that's been committed for a dozen years to realizing a new progressive reform-oriented Brooklyn Democratic Party. And we've been working to elect reform-oriented and progressive people at every level of government, new council members, new assembly members, new state senators, new members of Congress who are actually fighting to make a difference. And we have over a dozen years mobilized literally thousands of people to make change. And I stick with the Margaret Mead quote. I realized a long time ago that it's a small number of us that can make an enormous difference. And that is my orientation to local politics, to citywide politics, to national politics, is that a few of us can make an enormous change. And that's what it's all about.
It's especially fun for me to have you on this panel, of course, Lincoln, because a part of my political activation was actually canvassing for your campaign, which got me involved in Brooklyn local politics. And here I am today, right, working with all you fine people. So the power of a small group of people, and let's launch right off of that panel. Let's get right into that. So people aren't really sure sometimes what they can do to get involved. Now, some of the people who are watching this broadcast right now are pretty involved, right? So they're going to be kind of at a more advanced level of, what they can do, and we'll get to them. But I'd like to start by talking first about what can people do if they don't really know much about the political machinery of our country. Maybe they don't even understand how the table is set so well. And this is really the first place I want to start. What do you say to the person who has only 5 or 10 or maybe 15 minutes that they can even imagine doing aside from voting, either by ballot, by mail, or actually going to the poll? So let's start there, and we'll trickle our way in. But let's start, if you only had, and I wish people asked this question more often, if you only had 5 or 10 minutes, can you still make a difference? Can you really still do something? Humaira, can I start with you? What can a person do if they only have 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and that's all they can spare?
Well, of course, you have to decide what is important to you. It doesn't mean that you have to decide how you are going to do it, but what is important to you. And for me, it has been to focus on state legislators, which I'm going to talk about a little later. But if you have 5, 10, or 15 minutes, I would say at this point, the best impact that you can make is to get out the vote, to encourage people to register for mail-in ballots, and to get your friends who may be a little apathetic, maybe they're a little mad about what's happening, but need a little nudge. Just like my friend nudged me. She actually kicked me in the butt to start volunteering. But, it really makes a difference when you talk to a peer. Peers listen to each other. I cannot talk to my 20-year-old son and have him listen to me. But if his friend talks to him, he will listen to them. And that's why I think that one of the organizations that I have known about and I've been involved with is Turnout Nation, turnoutnation.org. They basically give you all the tools through an app so you can get your friends, nudge them again, and to get them to go out and register, and then get them to go out and vote. And I would say that is probably something that will be very, very important for this election, getting out the vote.
Beautiful. John, a lot of really good suggestions there from Humaira. I have to say, I always want to hear, especially from somebody who works in the game, what are some really good moves? And I'm sure you've got some other ideas. I'd like to hear from them as well. But I'm wondering if you can actually offer some bare bones moves. Like, how do you nudge someone? How do you engage with that peer without sounding like, the political friend who's over the top, who's, pumping the fist and being like, are you coming to the march? Like, how do you have any suggestions?
So I think that's a great question. And I think Humaira did a really good job of reminding us that there are tools that are quick and easy to use. And asking that first question, sort of, what do you care about? I think that actually is setting the stage for what is the best way to nudge people. If people know that you care about racial justice, then it becomes less surprising that you're nudging them about an important way to impact the movement towards racial justice. Right? If they know that you care about women's right to choose, then reaching out to them about candidates or opportunities that they can support a woman's right to choose, it becomes more natural. So a couple of things. The first is that even if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, find some folks that share your values or organizations and amplify their message, right? Whether that's, on Instagram, whether that's your Twitter, maybe you still use Facebook, whatever the case may be. Take a minute and find some organizations or individuals you like and amplify that message. Then second, check to see who's liking your page, who's actually following the posts that you're making. And then, the third piece would be having a human-to-human conversation, right? This, at the end of the day, is about creating authentic connections, and your friends best. So talk to them authentically about the things you want and you value, and then see if, what their plan is to go vote or what their plan is to make a difference. Line those up.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have been thinking a lot about how to do it as a teacher, right? How to talk about this as a teacher, because I'm really careful about how I manage my position in my job, and I suspect that I'm not alone in that. Whether you avoid talking about politics because at work it feels like you're pushing a line, I appreciate that. Or maybe you feel like maybe you don't even feel like it. Maybe it's a part of your job description. You're not supposed to talk about it. And by all means, of course, stick to whatever parameters and boundaries you have. But one of the things that I've learned, if I can quick share it, is that I like to ask questions and just listen and really listen, really pay attention to what people say, not just wait for them to finish talking or just try to mine the piece that I can pull into what I want to talk about. It's a little thing, but we all want to be heard. We all want to feel significant, and we all are. So that's just a little thing for those out there. Lincoln, I want to ask you, and before I ask you, I just want to kind of put it out to our Facebook Live group that's watching right now. There's people who are watching from across the country right now. What are some suggestions you have about, trying to get a hold of that person who doesn't feel like they've got a whole lot of time, doesn't feel like they've got a whole lot of energy? Lincoln, you have any thoughts about how to engage with people who don't have a lot of time, but they can making them feel like they still can do something, even if they can't commit too much of their life to it?
Absolutely. I think as John spoke to, it starts with relational organizing. It starts with your network. I think that we all, depending on the election that we're organizing around, whether it be the presidential, and we're thinking about who do we know in swing states where their votes really count, whether it be key Senate races, whether it be key state legislative races in our own neighborhood and backyard. The question of who are the people that you can reach out to that are your familial network, that are your friend network, that are people that are your colleagues at work, that you feel comfortable saying, hey, this election's important to me, and I'm supporting candidate X because of Y. And really want to just make sure that you're focused on coming out to vote and participating in this election. I think that the other thing to do that's really important that people really appreciate is information for how to vote. So especially in the context of a pandemic, this is how you can vote early, where you're less likely to be in an environment where there's a large number of people together. This is how you vote by mail, if that's how you feel most safe participating in the election. And this is where you go to vote on election day. And helping to make it as easy as possible for your family members and friends to make a plan to vote and to participate in the election. Relational organizing is the easiest thing to do. It's where your reaching out has the most influence, because people who know you trust you and they count on your advice on a range of matters, including politics. And it can feel like it's a uncomfortable thing to cross that Rubicon and talk to people about a topic that is not always engaged on. Religion, politics are sometimes things that we feel are better left unsaid. But an election like this one, when it's just so damn important, we have to have those uncomfortable conversations. We have to engage people that we might normally think aren't all that politically activated. And we need to make sure that they're participating and their vote is counting. And so relational organizing, 15 minutes every day, reaching out to one or two people you know in a district that matters, in a state that matters, in a area where their vote's going to make a difference in the Electoral College is vitally important.
That's beautiful, and I like the I like the aspirational notion of doing a little a day, and we'll pivot into that in a minute. I want to just throw out a question from our audience. Josh from San Francisco asks, what do you do when you're nervous to get involved because there's so much to know and learn that you feel out of your league? John, I see you smiling and laughing about that. You got something you could dive into for us?
Oh, right. I mean, this is a question I get all the time, right? And here's your magic phrase. I'm just a volunteer, right? And that gives so much permission to not have to be an expert on everything. You know, people care that you're reaching out and you want to get involved because of where your values are, where your heart is, where your passion is, the change you want to see in the world. And then just have an open heart and be receptive. You don't have to know everything to take the first step of saying, I want to help do something. And I think that's the biggest change. And then what you find is that just like anytime you're learning a new skill, and volunteering and to make a difference in politics is a skill. But you're going to have some trial and error, right? Some things are going to go really well and some things aren't. And that's okay.
How about it? How about Humaira?
Actually, this happened to me recently. By recently, I mean the past couple of years. I invited some friends to attend a fundraiser for the two candidates in Arizona that I'm supporting. And a friend of mine asked me a couple of questions about the candidates, and I couldn't answer it. And it was very embarrassing because I was like, oh my God, I've invited these people, but I looked so stupid because I couldn't really answer any questions about them. But I just said, you know what? To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that. And let me look into this and get back to you. And I have to say, she was like, okay, she was fine with it. So although there was I was a bit embarrassed. And the next time I did a fundraiser, I really read up on the candidates and knew everything about them. But it was fine. People, as John said, forgive you when you say, I'm new at this, I'm a volunteer, I'm doing my best. Nobody's going to treat you like a candidate and hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah, I think too, there's just something about admitting that you're nervous. I'm a theater teacher and director, and I always tell students, don't pretend like you're not nervous. Like, step into it and own it, because that vulnerability also invites people to root for you. So if you say, I actually don't know how to do this, but I'd like to talk to you about politics, and I'm a little nervous to do it, you might be surprised that might help out. Hey, I got a question for you, Lincoln. It's from Wendy in Colorado. She's in Colorado. It's a vote by mail state. They actually have those vote by mail states, and it works. How can I help, Wendy asks, but not go door to door or do phone calls? So what are some other options for you? Can you think of anything?
So firstly, Wendy, I would really encourage you to think about doing phone calls. It seems a little intimidating at first, but as John said, with a little trial and error, you do a few calls and you realize it's actually fun. It's fun to talk to people you don't know, to express why you're supporting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris or John Hickenlooper, and to encourage your neighbors to do the same. And to hear from them about what are the issues that they care about, and to have those conversations. It's intimate and it's meaningful, and you have a chance to make an enormous difference. And the opportunity you have to persuade somebody on the phone, or at someone's doorstep, which obviously, in our COVID times is less advisable. But the opportunity you have to persuade somebody on the phone is transformative. That being said, if you don't want to make those calls, totally your prerogative. The technology that's come about in the last couple of years around texting is phenomenal. There are a variety of different apps that have come about where you can text people who live in your state, or any other district, or in another part of the country if you prefer, and communicate with them and encourage them to go out and vote. And it's a earnest, one-on-one conversation that you have, texting with the person and trying to persuade them to join the movement and to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And it's wildly effective. I think that for a lot of people in my generation, I'm 36 and younger, it's actually how they prefer to communicate. They'd rather kind of not accept the call from the person they don't know. But if somebody texts, they're happy to go back and forth and to, hear it out, and you can help give them a plan to vote. But I do think that one-on-one communication, whether it be by phone or by text, is the best way to engage somebody directly and make a real difference in trying to turn them into an active voter in this election.
I'm thinking, Humaira, about Sister District. And I'm thinking about how that could be something that we might want to hear about right now. I mean, this feels like a kind of a good spot to talk about people who aren't really sure about how to do their connection thing. And it's in line with what John was talking about in terms, and Lincoln, about relational connection. So could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So like most of you volunteers, I was a little overwhelmed at the beginning as to where am I going to put my attention. The good thing is that I live in California, so we don't have much work to do locally. So, do I campaign and, give the little money that I have to the candidates, the presidential candidate? Do we go for flipping state Senate or for Senate race, or do we go more local? And that's how I got involved with the Sister District Project, which is basically focused on flipping state legislator seats from red to blue. And this organization helped me really understand why it's important to go down the ballot and how my participation as a Californian can affect the swing states. So that is one of the things that, I learned through the process. At first, I just went to the meeting because a friend told me I should go to the meeting. There's a trend here. It's actually the same friend who is always dragging me to places. But one of the things that I learned about the importance of the state legislature races. Sorry, I have trouble with that word, legislature. Is that, like I said, all politics are local politics. So any of the state laws that are created, it affects the people's daily lives. They control districting and gerrymandering. Any of the laws that pass locally tend to be adopted in other states if they work. And that means good laws and bad laws that discriminate against LGBTQ rights, laws that prohibit reproductive rights. If it's tested and works in one state, another state will adopt it. And sometimes it'll be adopted nationally. And also those state legislators like John end up eventually going national. So if you are supporting on the local basis in a state that is far from yours, and in your logical mind, you're wondering, why am I doing this? The reason is because those are the areas you can make a deep impact. And the $1 or $10 that you may donate to a national candidate goes much further in a state race. So I have been focused on 4 candidates, although the sister district has 10 states that we're supporting and many, many candidates, but I have narrowed it down to 4 because that friend of mine told me I should be focusing on these 4. And since then, I've gotten to know them and I've been on calls and I really love them. So 2 women in Arizona and 2 in Texas. And I feel that anything that I do, which involves phone calling, texting, as well as fundraising, is really affecting their campaign. But one of the things about the question about the phone calls, I have to tell you, when I was making calls for Hillary, which was when I first got involved in politics, I would sweat. Like I'd be so stressed out. It was very nerve wracking. But one day, like I just changed my relationship with these phone calls by thinking, hey, this is not for me. It's not a personal thing that I am asking for. And I am giving somebody an opportunity to get involved in their civic duty. And that has really lifted a lot of the weight off of me. And lately, when I made calls for Felicia French and Coral Evans in Arizona, people are happy to answer their phone and talk to you. It has been a very surprising experience for me, even if they are not supporting the candidates I'm calling for, they still are very civil. And I think it's because everybody's stuck at home. So give it a go. It's really, people are very civil and generous. And the worst that can happen is they hang up the phone on you.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you saying that people are civil, because I think that there is a little story being told in the world right now that people are not. And I think those of us who volunteered, yeah, you get hung up on sometimes. You do. It's true. But it's kind of amazing how many people say, you know what? Can I talk to you for a second? And I bet everybody on this call has got at least one example of getting on a volunteer call and then it turning into a 6-7 minute long conversation about somebody's mom or somebody's friend or what happened at work or what happened in the last election. I haven't heard from you on this question, John. I want to just plant another question out there and then throw it to you, and you can either take this question or you can move on. This is a question from David in California, and he asks, there are so many organizations that are out there about the elections. How do you know which ones are legitimate and will allow me to have the biggest impact up and down the ballot? Again, this is not a direct question for you at the moment, John. I'm just floating that out there. But I did want to come back to you about any thoughts you had about the last question.
Well, no, I think, asking people to get involved in races all across the country, I think is important, right? And, drawing those direct connections that the elections that are won or lost in different parts of the country ultimately impact us. I see this in my congressional race really clearly. I'm going to go to Congress and we're going to be voting yes or no on laws that impact the entire country. So what happens in Michigan's 6th congressional district makes a difference. What happens in state legislative races all across the country makes a difference. And so, I would really encourage folks to find a way to get involved, pick a place where they want to make an impact. And I'll tell you from a campaign perspective, finding dedicated volunteers who are willing to make a commitment and say, look, we've got 8 weeks left, right? So I'm willing to help out once a week for the next 8 weeks with a race. It's great. You get to know the campaign, you get to know the candidates, and you actually are going to make a measurable impact over the next 8 weeks on changing the outcomes of elections. And I guess to David's question in California, I just flagged this as well, which is there's a number of great organizations that are doing good work. You have to sort of figure out who's probably what you think making the biggest impact on a set of values or issues that you personally care about most. But make a choice, stick with it. And I think the biggest thing is, being consistent in your engagement, whether that's 15 minutes a day or 2 hours a week or 2 hours or 3 times a week. All of that consistency adds up to create big change.
Yeah. I'd love to just add to that point from John. In my opinion, there are 2 absolutely critical variables in the success of a campaign. One is the dynamism and capacity of the candidate. And secondly is the enthusiasm of the volunteer base. There is nothing like a dedicated group of volunteers that are going out every day, once a week, even once every other week, and spreading the gospel, sharing the information that they believe in about why they think their candidate is the person who can be the change maker that we need, and convincing their neighbors and their acquaintances and everybody they possibly can to go out and vote and support the person that they care about. It is phenomenally influential. It makes all the difference in the world. It's why Sister District is so compelling, because it's a small number of people in Brooklyn can influence a race in Harrisburg in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's why what John's doing in Michigan is so important, because we can all help to make sure that we get a dynamic progressive Democrat elected in Southern Michigan. We can make a huge difference wherever we plug in. It's really about us being disciplined and taking the time and making a priority and plugging in and doing the work.
Mike, can I add something to that?
Of course.
If there was a request for specific organizations, and since I'm not a politician, I can share what I have vetted out. So if you are interested in state legislature races, check out the Sister District Project, and they're going to type in their URL for you. If you are interested in getting your neighbors and family members to register to vote, the organization Voter Participation Center will help you register people, sign up for mail-in ballots, and then check in on the registration. Is all done online. And then Center for Voter Information provides resources and tools to help voting eligible citizens register, and they can answer questions such as, can I vote early? Can I vote absentee? Do I need ID? So all of these two organizations have been vetted and reliable, and they're doing amazing work. And then Vote Forward, if you want to write postcards and encourage other people to vote. And then Turnout Nation is the app that's going to get you to help your friends get motivated to go out and vote.
You're awesome. Thank you for that raft of resources that I know we're going to be sharing. And I just want to say, Only You Can Save Us, apart from giving, I think, a lot of people a voice and an opportunity to connect and build community, is committed to pointing people like an arrow at different organizations that Only You Can Save Us is pulling out and putting out to you and saying, check these guys out, look them up. It's an amazing group of organizers. We're talking about as grassroots as it gets. The person who founded Only You Can Save Us basically started with an idea. His name is Jason, and his idea was simply this: a lot of people want things to be different. We don't want to feel frustrated anymore. What can we do? And that's what's so beautiful about this panel. And as we kind of wind up and get to the end of this panel, just want to kind of remind all of us of, well, my grandmother's advice, which is, if you can just do a little bit more, just a little bit more. You don't have to do a lot more. If you can't do once a week for the next 8 weeks, then you can't. Okay, can you do once every 2 weeks? Could you do 4 times in the next 8 weeks? Could you do 2 times in the next 8 weeks? Can you do 1 time? And I also want to just make a quick plug for poll watching and poll volunteering. These are opportunities for you. Now, a lot of poll work is actually paid work, and you should check out in your local area what that looks like. I know here in New York, it's a paid gig. It's and I just want to remind people that while there are concerns about COVID, so you're going to want to make your decisions about this. I know that there are efforts being made right now across the country to make polls very well ventilated, for people to be properly masked up, to wear shields, to wear gloves, to have all of the antiseptic. I'm working in a public school, and I can tell you right now, we are filled to the gills with everything we can have to support moving a lot of people through. I know it's a scary time, but I just want to also plug people going for working the polls. I always like to remind people, you know what you should do is work the poll. Okay. Elizabeth in San Francisco asks, I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Do you have thoughts on signing up as poll workers on election day? It's not exactly volunteering, but given the potential problems, it's worth looking into that. Obviously, I just got started on that. John, I want to know, what is it like being a poll worker in Michigan these days? Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, we're working to make sure that we have all of our polls properly staffed with folks who can help folks in and out efficiency with social distancing in place. We absolutely need more folks though to sign up. A lot of times poll work is done by some of our senior citizens, and frankly, it benefits everybody to diversify our poll working staff, so it's more reflective of our entire communities. I would say that you're probably in for a long day. In Michigan, you got to get there before the polls open. You got to work all day and then help tear down at the end. So you're signing up for like a 15-hour day. But it's one of the things that you can do to directly connect with folks and make sure people can get their ballots. And it's good to have folks who are trained and skilled, who with a good open heart and ear to make sure that folks who are legally allowed to vote are going to have their best advocate there at the polls helping them. So yeah, I would encourage you to sign up. And I think everything's going to look a little differently this year, because normally we'd be saying, oh, you should come help us with get out the vote on election day. And I think it's just everything's going to look a little differently. So sign up, be on the front lines of democracy, and help staff a polling location.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Another question for the group, and maybe this is with Lincoln and Humaira first. What are the texting apps? And can you get addresses? I did. Wendy in Colorado says, I did the postcards to Florida Dems and they sent you addresses. What are the texting apps? What are some texting apps you guys have used? Lincoln, you've been on this.
So my favorite texting app that I've used is Reach. It's terrific. It's really easy. I've also used Hustle, which is great too. Basically, you'll link up with a campaign that is utilizing one of these apps like Reach, and they will plug in, and you will be directly reaching out to voters. You won't know their addresses. You'll have their phone numbers, and you'll know, approximately where they're living. So it's an effective way to kind of informally be reaching out to folks and moving them. I do just want to add on John's previous point how important it is to be a poll worker, and how many of our poll workers across the country are disproportionately seniors and don't feel safe going out there right now. And it's up to us to step in and spend our 15-hour days working the polls and making sure that our democracy functions. Having more competent, thoughtful, caring people at the polls will make the elections work better in each and every neighborhood, district, state around the country. And so it is a tremendous form of public service, and really can't encourage people enough to make that a part of their volunteering this election cycle.
Humaira, you have any thoughts about anything we'd add? I know we've got in the chat on the Facebook page, Kirsten from California says that you can go through a training with the Biden campaign. They host them all the time, and they use Slack and Through Text as texting platforms. It's really easy. I sent 1,500 texts over the weekend, and I mean, I'm just wondering how Kirsten's thumbs are doing. Humaira, I mean, have you used any other apps? Reach is a good one. What else you got?
All the texting that I've done has actually been through the campaign, so it was not an independent app. I don't have one to recommend, but if to answer the question about polling from San Francisco, my husband apparently doesn't have 5 or 10 minutes to volunteer, but he signed up as a poll worker, and he will be working from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. It is a paid gig, minimum wage. And although I'm immunocompromised, we decided that it's worth it for him to do it, and he will probably have to quarantine himself afterwards. But we felt strongly that that was something that needed to be done, and he's involved in it.
It's amazing. What a little insight into your family. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just thinking that we talk about how elections become stories in the future that we look back on. Like, where were you when? I think of a lot of people in my generation. We think about where were you when Barack Obama was elected president? Where were you when with hanging chads in 2000 with the Bush and Gore election? And I'm just thinking about how powerful it would be in the future to say, when someone says, where were you in the 2020 election? And you say, I was working the polls, man. Like, I was in it. I spent the day. It's my birthday, by the way, November 3rd, this election. So if you're looking to get me something, but maybe we don't know each other that well, or we can't connect, and all the restaurants are closed, you could work the poll for me. That would be an amazing gift. I am not kidding at all. That would make me so happy, even if we don't know each other. Hey guys, as we kind of wrap up, I know there's a really rich conversation going on the Facebook page now, and I know it's going to continue. I guess I want to just close with some statements of energy, statements of hope. I just feel like it's such a dark space online. I feel everywhere I look, there's people talking doom and gloom about this election, about the future of our country. And I was just wondering if we could just go down the line, Humaira, then Lincoln, then John. If you could just tell everybody out there, tell us something good. Where's your heart? What should we be thinking about? Humaira?
Well, I'm very hopeful, and that is one of the reasons that I spend my time volunteering for the Sister District Project, or getting out the vote. And I just feel that if I come from a country that was in war, that we did not have the right to vote. We lost a lot of our rights. And I love the United States. I think it's an incredible place. I'm one of the most patriotic people in my house. And I want the US to be the great country that it was before. And I think there's potential, and there are incredible people like all of you on the panel, and Mike, and all of you who have come on. And you just need to get out there and do something.
Lincoln, thank you for that, Humaira.
Oh,
You're
great.
good.
Sorry, my internet is giving me a
You're
hard
doing
time.
great.
But the thing I want to remind us all, after a very an incredibly dark 3.5 years, is that Donald Trump won this election by less than 100,000 votes. That was the margin combined in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Combined, it was less than 100,000 vote difference in those 3 states. We can make the difference in this election by just doing the work. Your volunteer hours are what will make the difference between our country going into an abyss that we can't even fathom and a future that we can believe in. And 60 days from now, we have an opportunity to look at ourselves in the mirror, look at our families, look at our friends, and say we did what we could to change the direction of our country, or we can feel disappointed in ourselves. And so let's do everything we can to give ourselves over fully for these 60 days, and give whatever time you can spare to make sure that this is a future we can believe in.
Thank you, Lincoln. John?
Look, you don't run for office if you don't think things can change for the better. And so there are thousands of candidates just like me all across the country who've put their names on the ballots. And we need your help. So I hope, folks, if find your local candidate, come join our team, johnhoadley.com/join us, and figure out how you want to make a difference. And like Lincoln said, at the end of this day, there is going to be an election, and it will be held, and the votes will be counted. And the question is, are we going to be able to sleep the next day knowing that we did everything we possibly could to change the direction of our country for the better? And if you think that you couldn't answer yes to that question right now, the good news is that we still got 8 weeks left to make sure that you can say yes at the end of this. So find your candidate, find your organization, find your voice, and get involved. Our country needs you.
So that's it, folks. That's what the fact is. Our country needs you, needs every one of us. And even if you can only give a little bit, there's time. Give a little bit. Do it for my grandma. Do it for your grandma. And do it for the kids who are coming after us.
Yeah.
All right. From all of us at Only You Can Save Us, thanks so much for joining us. Humaira Ghilzai, Lincoln Restler, Representative John Hoadley, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night, everybody. Let's get it.
Thank you.